Welcome to the talk today. Thanks for coming. I'm excited. We're going to be talking about self-serve, the elusive holy grail of data teams, why it has not actually been realized so far, and the path that I think we can have to actually realizing self-serve. So a little bit on me first. My name is Paul. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Zenlytic. I have a master's in data science from Harvard. I'm based in Denver, Colorado, and I've worked setting up data stacks for about 7+ years now. A lot of that was actually as an agency, where we would go in and set up data stacks, setting up BigQuery, setting up Looker, setting up Tableau, setting up Snowflake, processes like that. So I've been through a few of these BI setup processes and seen self-serve fail firsthand. I'm also very into rock climbing. So what we're going to talk about today is first sort of what is self-serve, which is kind of every BI tool that's ever existed has claimed to be self-serve. And they're not really lying. It's just sort of the goalposts change as the tools change for self-serve. So we'll look at how that's progressed. And then we'll look at why it hasn't happened. Like, what are the actual sticking points? Like, what actually makes this problem hard? And then finally, we'll take a look at how I think it can actually work. So first, we've got to answer that question of what actually is self-serve. So like I said, it's kind of a spectrum. It sort of depends on what you're talking about. So way back in the day, we had business objects. So here we're talking about static dashboards. These things are, what we would call OLAP cubes, sort of tables that are aggregated up, shown, and they're very static. So it's self-serve in the sense that if you need what it happens to be exactly on the dashboard, then you're served. And if not, then, well, you should probably email somebody. So it's a very limited definition of self-serve. But then, the next generation of tools comes along, and we've got Tableau. Tableau is going to give you the ability to do more. You're going to be able to have more flexibility, do more filtering, actually perform edits, maybe an additional group by on a dashboard. And that means that if something's on the dashboard and you just need a few modifications on top of that, Tableau is actually going to be able to get the job done pretty well. But there's always questions about things that go one step beyond the dashboard. So that is what I would call explore from a dashboard. Looker is a great example of this. They do this really well. If you have something that's on a dashboard and you just need one additional step, some other iteration on that data past the dashboard, then Looker is a great tool for you. You're able to actually take that next step and find what you need on a self-service basis. But that doesn't really get to what I think is the heart of what we talk about when we talk about self-serve. So we have another concept that I would call explore anywhere. So that's how your CEO asks questions, where she just says, hey, I want to know who churned in the last week, and I want a list of names. So this is not starting from a dashboard. This is not finding what you want first and then iterating on it a little bit. This is just asking for what you want and getting it. And note that this isn't everything. I have this everything else category over here. There's a lot of really advanced analytics that I don't think really will ever become self-serve. And that's OK. There's really complicated stuff that should pretty much always be the purview of the data team. So that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about with Explore Anywhere is being able to just ask questions, get answers to those without having to know where you want to start. Knowing where you want to start being a dashboard, a table, a very clear, concrete concept that you want to ask about. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about self-serve. So then the question is, why hasn't it happened? It seems, at least to me, almost self-evident that we want this to happen. This would be beneficial. This would be helpful for data teams. It would reduce friction. It would take probably the worst part of running a data team, which is just fielding this never-ending stream of ad hoc requests, trying to find time to do the more complicated work that really moves the needle for the business. And if it's so valuable, why hasn't it happened? And it's because it's hard. Data is actually very hard. The thing that seems really simple and straightforward is just not. And there's a few dimensions on which it's hard that I'm going to talk about today. So I picked 3. And I would say, first, discovery is hard. most of the time, these ad hoc questions come in because someone goes, pops into Looker, pops into Tableau, sees 50 to 100 to some organizations we've talked to, 3,000 dashboards. And they say, you know what, it's going to take me so long to go through this. I'm just going to email my contact on the data team. And that discovery piece means that it's got to be easy to find what you want and fast to kind of experiment around and make sure that you've got what you need. Next, metrics are hard. That's why a lot of talks here have been around the semantic layer, is that if you have to go and find those metric definitions or create those metric definitions as you're moving, it's really hard to make that actually work because you've got to remember all the nuance of all the different definitions. You know, how did we exclude test users? You know, was net revenue net with refunds or just discounts? There's a lot of complications that people have to remember if they have to go and define this every time. When those get too complicated, it becomes an email to the data team. And finally, I'll say data interfaces suck. Kind of, but not really. They're great for analysts. They're great for people who want to get in the weeds and build really powerful stuff. But they're not good for people who just need some numbers. They just need the data. These interfaces are powerful, but they're not for everyone. They're really built for analysts, and they cater to an analyst experience. Business users don't want to learn a new tool. They don't want something to put on their resume. So to give some examples, some concrete examples, this is all stuff that I've seen, setting up data stacks and working with Zenlytic. So first, you've got questions that are kind of, where do I go, like to generally to find something? So are active users based on something on the user status, or is like an actual activity, like an event that we've been tracking in Segment? Where do I even go to kind of start this conversation? And then next, you've got things like, OK, well, I've got two different tables. Maybe I've got a user's kind of fact table, like a daily fact table, and then I've got a user's dimension table. And if both of those have a current paying users metric, which one do I go to find current paying users today? It's not always clear. And to someone who's not really data savvy, it's going to be difficult to weed that out. And you might say, I'm a little bit worried about pulling the wrong number. I'm just going to ask somebody. And then finally, even in tools that have explore concepts or like join concepts like Looker, you're going to say, hey, I have a question that kind of spans two of those. And I still don't know which one to go into. And I don't know if I go into one and click the other thing, I'm going to get something different. And again, once it gets too hard in the discovery mode, it just becomes a question to the data team. And then metrics are hard. Metrics are hard for a bunch of reasons. But one of the one that matters a lot is time. Is that you can have a very well-defined metric in a tool like Looker, or well-defined measure in a tool like Tableau, and then someone could go in, see 5 different date columns, and say, you know what, I'm almost there, but I'm still not sure what to do, and I really don't want to pull the wrong number, so again, email to the data team. Or the actual metric definitions themselves, like the example I gave earlier. Is net revenue net of refunds, or just net of discounts? And then if you have a tool that lets you do joins on the fly, you run into issues where there's weird stuff in the database. One thing I've seen was people put leads in their users table that had no customer ID. So you join on those, and you have lots of problems. And this sort of stuff is stuff that we understand as data people and can sort of see, OK, that doesn't look right. Got to figure out why. But for a business user, they just see, our revenue is obviously not $1 trillion, so I need to go and talk to the data team. And then finally, these interfaces, like this is Power BI. These are great for business people. Are great for data people. But for business people, there is a lot going on here. You've got to figure out what the heck even a measure and a dimension is. And then you've got all these configuration options that, frankly, you don't care about because you're going to download it to Excel anyway. And the same thing with Tableau. It's really powerful. You can customize this and change the shade of pink in the higher one of these stacked bars in this area chart. And again, it's a lot of power, but it just makes it harder to do the basic thing the business users want to do. And take a tool like Looker. You just want to see sessions and revenue together, and you have to figure out creating 2 subqueries and merging those results at the end. It's not something that a business user is going to actually do. They're going to get part of the way through it, and then they're going to email the data team and ask them, how do I do this? Can you just pull these numbers for me? So then the question is self-serve actually a myth? Like, are these problems insurmountable? Is this something that you can't actually do? So on this one little Twitter poll, we see we're going to get self-driving cars before self-serve analytics. And we'll see. So the question I have is, how could it happen? So what would the roadmap be for making self-serve analytics actually a reality and not something that's always just around the corner? And this is what everybody's thinking. You're like, wow, it's amazing. And it really is. It's the single biggest improvement in technology that I've seen in my life. It is incredibly powerful. But it also doesn't negate the data is hard section. There's still, like, even with GPT-4, there's lots of complications with defining metrics. It just cannot be wrong. You can't tell the CEO a wrong number for revenue and expect her to come back and look at this tool again. It's just not going to happen. So defining metrics, that has to be solved. That has to be right. And discovery makes sense here, right? You don't have a giant list of 1,000 things. You can just ask about something. That makes sense. But you also can't have the intern asking about HR data. So you've got to have real security, not something that you sort of hide behind a prompt like OpenAI does now. You can't tell it it's writing a play and then have it give you some data you shouldn't have access to. But the main thing that I want to focus on with the LLMs is that the interface is finally right. Because self-serve needs to work the way that humans already work. And humans already work in conversations. They work in back and forth. They work in, I don't quite know what I want yet, but I know generally the area that I need to go in. So like, what can I ask about here? What do we have here? There's a lot of back and forth that happens before you write any SQL, before you actually go in and click on the specific things that you need to answer the question. And that work needs to happen in a conversation, in a back and forth, where you work with someone, or in this case, something, who has knowledge of your data, has knowledge of your metrics and how you do things, and is able to answer those questions in a back and forth. So then the question is, OK, if the interface is really good, then what is missing? I would say it's really about metrics and governance. Are you able to enforce the right security? And are you able to define the right metrics? And then, if only there was a way to govern and define these metrics, it's something that we've talked about a lot so far at Coalesce, is the semantic layer. So the semantic layer, I think, that is the key. That is the thing that you need to be able to unlock true self-serve. Because you're able to take these two components and marry them in a really, really powerful way. So I would say from LLMs, the thing that we have that is most important is comprehension. They understand your intent and understand what you are talking about in a way that software never has before. This is huge. This is giant, but it's not everything. Understanding what you mean isn't the same as giving you the right answer. Semantic layers, on the other hand, bring correctness. Every time you put in the measures, the dimensions, the filters you want, you're going to get the same SQL, and you can validate that it's going to be right. They give you a level of correctness that's really important. But by themselves, they're ultra complex. No one's going to scroll through a list of 3,000 metrics and reading all that documentation that you may or may not have written about how to use those metrics. So you really need these two things together. You need both the comprehension and you need the correctness of the semantic layer. And together, you have context. That business context is where self-serve can really happen, where you have the comprehension of the LLM married with the right context, the metric definitions, the security, the things that you need to make sure that you're delivering a product that you are confident are right to your stakeholders. So in summary here, with LLMs and the semantic layer together, we kind of get the best of both worlds. We have metrics that now make sense to the LLM. You're able to define these things and have clear, governed, QA-able definitions that the LLM can then just reference. You get discovery and you get security. You get to make sure that the intern's not looking at HR data, and you get an interface that someone can just ask, hey, what can I ask about, and get a real answer back. Or that someone can ask about something specific and get a really specific answer back. Both times not having to scroll through a list of 1,000 things. And finally, and I think most importantly, you get that simple interface. You get self-serve working the way that humans already work. People have been asking for data questions since before we had email, since before we had databases. You know, I mean, this is the oldest interface for getting data. So that's how I think we have an actual roadmap to self-service, is with this combination of LLMs and the semantic layer. Those two things together can give us the actual roadmap to making self-serve a reality in a way that it just has never been in BI before. So I would love to show you a short demo. This is just what we're working on. This is our vision at Zenlytic for how we can make self-service analytics a reality. So I will just hop in and show you a quick demo of the tool in action. I don't know if I play this. There we go. So this example is just going to be a quick back and forth of how this process works. Most business questions that are asked, like this one right now, what are my top 3 marketing channels, are not really clear. And if someone asked you as an analyst this question, you wouldn't give them a SQL query back or a plot back. You would give them a follow-up question. And that follow-up question would say, hey, you know, I can help you out here. I can sort of point you in the right direction. These are things that we have defined that make sense to look at with marketing channels. You know, which do you want here? And then the end user is able to say, oh, okay, well, you know, what I sort of took for granted, we can tease out here and make the person actually write down, you know, what they're looking for. So I just want to see the top ones by gross revenue here. And here you're able to go and turn a kind of vague question that's not actually answerable initially, iterate with the person to find the actual sort of the way you can answer that question with data that exists in your database. And then now you're able to really start the iteration process. Now that you've got that first insight, you might say, okay, well, Facebook's the biggest place where I'm spending money. How's that going? Like how is that doing recently? And you're able to continue that iteration process without the lag of a human being who has to sleep and take a vacation and do something besides writing SQL on their lunch break. And you're able to continue that iteration and to be able to see what's going on. And all the while seeing assets that you can, that's useful, add that to a dashboard. That's useful, send that to someone else. Assets that are easy to share. And then here, you could even say, okay, well, this is going down. This is dipped down. So what's happened? I need to explain this. I need to figure out why this is going down. So you drag over that section. You click that explain the change button and figure out why. And then you can really quickly be launched into a root cause analysis. You're able to use the power of these LLMs to be able to actually dive into deeper detail in data than you've seen before. So you can say, okay, well, this Facebook trial promotion is the main driver of the decrease here. This is why things are going down. But this organically you campaign for this SPF cream product is crushing it. This is doing really well. Maybe I need the list of emails. I can go and actually see who's in this campaign and how I can optimize this. So maybe I want to do a Facebook retargeting audience or a lookalike audience. Actually use the data in an actionable way. You can click on that, really quickly get that list of emails, and overall go from a high level, not quite a question yet, question, all the way down into the actual detail you need to move the needle for the business. And that's just an example. And this is, where we are now. Like, this technology is moving so fast. I really think in a year or two, using data is going to feel like having a little army of Bain consultants that just answer all your questions in a few seconds. This LLM tech is moving so fast, and I think with the right guardrails, the right governance, we can realize self-serve analytics in a way that just has not been possible until now. So that's all I had to say.